But yeah, so I believe the game that we are going to be focusing on is Clossius, who actually
Ooh,
just commentated. He did a great job with Telegraph. Great guys, job guys.
lovely.
So yeah, wow, what a work day for him. Commentating is now going to jump into the tournament, doing lots for us against Eric Yoder. Perfect. I am in,
Wonderful.
and we can start looking at this game.
Sure. Let's see how far. I think they're about 10 moves in. Okay.
Oh
Yep.
my
That's
goodness!
it's a move. It's a move. Certainly a move.
Wait, Clossius is black here.
Clossius is
He
black there.
is the weaker player here. Bold move to start out with Tangen as the weaker player. I feel like
Weak is all relative, but I am no less shocked. I obviously started the review, but I definitely didn't look at the moves. So we're in for a match, I reckon. Everyone knows the telltale, legend of Tengen when it comes from like Hikaru no Go of like whoever, if black has managed to use the stone, then it's theoretically good, but because it's so hard to do so, because it's theoretically an influential kind of vibe, it's kind of hard to utilize properly. So I guess that will be the story of the game. And Eric is relatively unpraised and taking star points.
I mean,
And then immediately 3-3. Okay, so it's kind of a you know, um just a revolution of AI, right? That we immediately take a 3-3. Eric is saying, yeah.
oh my goodness,
I
we have a
clearly
silly
misunderstood the story of this game.
true
I
theme going on
I
here.
should have gone past a few moves. This is Mirror Go, which is, hey, I think at least in Western Go, it was popularized maybe most recently by Jonas Welticke. Maybe I'm mispronouncing that, but he's a European player, pretty strong, right? I think like 6-ton, maybe European, and he almost beat Baduk Doctor using Mirror Go. So I, for like we watch Hikaru no Go, Akira sets up like a ladder, right, and then destroys his opponent or whatever. But like I cannot make such a ladder in a game so casually. So I don't know how this game is going to go. Commentary wise, it might be super easy, it might be super difficult, but at least we know that the players are mirroring one another. So
Well, I love this from Sean's Clossius's perspective. You know, maybe if you're a little intimidated of the stronger player, why not use a great strategy of Mirgo? Like you're saying,
I think
obviously, you're asking the question of the stronger player, like, how you got to figure this out. If I'm going to mirror you, how are you going to beat me? So
right.
I kind of love it. I love the boldness.
I think
Um,
it's certainly wonderful. Like I would genuinely love to play Mirago. I just feel so actually most relatable. So we recently had the Chicago Open, right? A couple of weeks ago, and I played 3-4 Josekis in one of the corners. And whenever I low approach my opponent and they pincer me, and maybe I don't have the best repertoire of Joseki, I will literally mirror it in the other side of the board. And that part, it's a little bit more difficult because it's not fully symmetrical. It's just symmetrical in one corner. And so like the various Joseki results might influence the board in different ways. But I think if you don't know what to do, mirroring your opponent when applicable and to a certain degree is a wonderful strategy. And if it's a whole game mirroring, then I will learn from this game at the very least on how to beat Miriko
yeah.
theoretically, or how to play Miriko.
I've actually never played anyone that's mirrored me, so I've never played a mirror go game. And it's kind of interesting when we think about this position, right? Black went first, so if this is mirror go, really the only difference is Tangen,
Is
right?
Tengen.
So if we were to just mirror all the way, Tangen's the difference, right?
Right.
So if we were to actually evaluate this position, it's kind of interesting because White is kind of getting territory, in the one corner. Uh, and so the key difference maybe is that these three black stones at D17, 16, 15 have maybe some influence towards the center, where black
Yeah.
has a stone at Tangen, and then white has the exact same thing, right? Mirrored, the three stones,
Right.
but white doesn't have a stone at Tangen.
At
So I
Tengen.
feel like this is the key difference in the position, right?
Yeah, so like kind of playing off that a little bit, I won't pretend to be any kind of expert in logical analyses of Mirigo, but yeah, it does make sense, right? That Tengen is the 361st intersection. That is the difference maker. There is a thing to be said though, that like white has Comey, right? And so I don't think this has ever occurred. But theoretically, if the game goes to the very end and it's perfectly symmetrical, which eventually won't happen because there will be ladders, there will be nets, there will be some kind of algae. But you can think of it as if every move is equal, then theoretically white will have Comey at the end. Again, kind of a baseless analysis because it should not be a fully mirrored game. I don't expect to see a mirrored game for the next 70, 80 moves. But if it does happen, then as long as white doesn't fall too behind in any kind of exchanges, which theoretically shouldn't happen again because of the mirror nature of it, white should be okay by Comey. And if chat has anything to say about that, please let me know, because this is just my small brain thinking out loud.
Yeah, I do like that evaluation. It's almost like black playing Tengen. I feel like one of the reasons maybe it's not the most popular thing to do at the beginning of the game is you kind of have to prove that it's worth something, right? At some moment, you have to prove its worth. So at this point in the game, it's not exactly clear how Tengen will be utilized, right? And if white can make it, right, maybe part of white's strategy is like, okay, I don't need to address whatever this random Tengen stone immediately, but if I can, in the end, make it look silly, like make it look like what
like a dominate point, exactly.
Yeah, what's that stone even doing there? Then like that's sort of, I feel like, white's goal here, right?
Yeah, certainly. And I think that black is very much, or at least if I were playing black against an opponent like stronger than me, playing in a mirror game, I would not be thinking about Tengen in any kind of way. To me, the way I would look at Tengen is just a way to basically force my opponent to play first and make sure that my opponent can't break the mirror so easily because I took the point of symmetry, right? Like, I don't think black is going to be thinking of, because what white is calling all the shots, right? White has the sente, so to speak, in most of these situations because black is in the following role, right? Black has to follow whatever moves white plays. So until black sees a move that is more valuable than white is playing, then black will break the mirror. But for right now, I don't think Tengen is going to be the kind of like the main point of the game, if that makes sense. Like when I first started the analysis and I didn't know that it was Mirago, I was like, okay, how is black going to utilize Tengen? But now that it's Mirago, Tengen has basically served its purpose mostly in establishing the mirror of I will follow you as my opponent and you can't do anything about it because there's only 361 and I took that last one, if that makes sense. You know?
Man. Yeah.
So it looks like white's strategy.
Oh, okay. Here we go. Finally, the mirror's been broken. Finally, we get an attach.
And so this attach is something. So generally in attach in this kind of situation, there are several options, not locally, but like you could theoretically, pull back. It's not very good. I expect something like maybe like this will occur. But the idea is that generally speaking, when attached to Ahane is the correct follow-up by AI, and the pullback in one direction or another is more of a specific use case scenario. So we see the Hane coming out from Eric, which makes sense. Black's goal with the attachment. So of course, when you attach to an opponent's stone, right, this has been said and over again, which is why I have the confidence to tell everyone this. You both become stronger locally, right? And so the idea is that black wouldn't try to, let's see. Like, so imagine if there was a black stone here, maybe we can look at a kind of weakness in this kind of longer extension from white. And this kind of move is going to be slow anyway, so black, I wouldn't recommend black playing it, but this is basically saying white, you have no more weaknesses after the following exchanges, but in exchange, I get a little bit of thickness on the outside. These two moves here become, I wouldn't call them like true thickness, but black is clearly playing towards the center because locally we can see here that white has gained a few points, but more than that, white has gained like full group safety. White is not going to worry about making life with this group. So black is saying, I'll give you all of that, but I'm going to make these two stones mean something. So locally, it's a better, so if we just take this, I love OGS's drawing tool. If we just take this result locally, it is of my opinion that white has gained like solid points, right? White has gained group safety. White has gained just this general solidness, as we can see Eric taking more territory here. In exchange, black is saying these three stones or the resulting play from them will give me enough benefit that I am willing to give you that safety, those points at the bottom. That's the language being spoken here.
Yeah, and it makes complete sense, right? Because now, sort of, I feel like the vision of TangJie is maybe becoming more alive, right? Because now with
Yeah.
the thickness, maybe it's still hard to argue exactly that TangJie's doing anything, but at least maybe
Right.
the vision's coming
Right.
more together, right? At least
So
there's a loose vision.
exactly. So at the very least, we can say that we understand Black's mindset. I see it from chat that people think it's a bit early. I would agree personally. I don't know that I would break mirror at the moment because the points are pretty good at this moment. But Black is clearly saying, "Hey, this is a local loss for me. I'm gonna make it worth my while." This is at least if certainly if Tengen was not on the board, I do not expect Black to play this way. Um, if there were no Tengen, perhaps I still am not a fan of the attachment, mind you, but like if there were no Tengen, then Black's Vault would probably be something in this direction, as opposed to the Hani on top, because not only do you make a little bit of points here theoretically, but you stop your opponent from expanding around the side as well. So, but we can see here that Black is saying, no, this is fine. This is all according to plan. Kei kakudori. But we'll see how much like this influence will affect everything. Currently, the relationship between A and B is a little bit tenuous, but I would not try to cut or anything as White at this moment. There's no reason to rush. White is already strong, so I don't expect White to play many more moves from the bottom side here. Because in the opening, right, the main point is that. So okay, let me ask you this question, Ball. When do you okay. What is the opening to you? What is the point of the opening to you? Like, what are you
Uh,
trying to do personally in the opening?
Personally, the opening, when I think opening, I just think big moves, right? There's just a lot of open space on the board. So obviously corners are most efficient. So go for the corners. And then after that, you just take the biggest moves remaining on the board. The thing that can change that is sometimes there's some more complicated fighty Josekis, right? That can sort
Sure.
of change the game from like, okay, now we're not just like, now the biggest moves on the board aren't just the biggest spaces. It's actually groups are in danger, right? So
Yeah.
basically,
Absolutely.
my mindset is just play the biggest moves until there's actually a weakness somewhere, at which point the game can sort of diverge to the weakness of a group.
And I think that's a fairly good high level idea of it all. Certainly when I wouldn't say I studied in Japan. I went to Osaka Go Camp a few times, well, 5, 6 times, but less than that. I attended some like more kind of beginner focused classes in Japan, but like it was taught by Yasuko. Yasuko, she was she's a former insei married to like a pretty strong professional Go player. But the way she teaches is pretty similar to what you said, like playing the big open areas. It makes sense. Corners are most efficient for points. I agree. That's generally why we start in the corners. But then another thing is from Maeda sensei, Ryo Maeda, he's like 6 dan professional from Kansai-kin. He's not super competitive, he's more of a teacher now, but the idea is that the opening, according to him, and I know more than just him as a professional, other people too, the opening is kind of how you determine what groups you'll be creating and interacting with, fighting with, for example, in the middle game. So the opening is less about points, apart from, I guess, starting in the corner. And it's more about kind of figuring out, hey, am I going to go for those open spaces in a more nimble fashion, playing faster across the board? And in exchange, I'll lose a little bit of that thickness, that solidness of play, that group safety, perhaps. Like you're covering a lot of space, but maybe there's shape issues, like so on and so forth, balanced against the thickness and maybe fewer points being covered, but like a solid group, right? And they each have their pros and cons, right? I can't say that one style is better than the other. And in fact, I'm sure to become a good, strong player, I'm still on that road. You'll need a mix of both. But what I'm trying to say is the opening is about sending, like deciding on what kind of groups you'll go into the middle game with, right? And so Black is saying, I have kind of this thickness, and White is saying, yeah, I have these points. But right now we don't know enough about the groups. Both players are relatively solid. What Black has a little bit more cutting points, between A and B. Not that they should be aimed at the moment, but so yeah, the opening tells a story about the groups, then like what groups you're going to the middle game with. Then the middle game is how those groups will fight, how those groups will run, how those groups will interact with one another. And then finally Yose, the end game, is most about the points, right? Because it's pure mathematics. I suffer at it. There's a player called Street Play, Tyler. He's really good at it. But basically, what I'm trying to say is the focus of the game in the opening should not be about points. So white did get a lot of points, but that was kind of a byproduct of black saying, I want this kind of center facing, maybe thickness, maybe not thickness. We'll see if it's a liability or an asset.
Actually,
To go
yeah,
into.
that makes so much sense. And I think maybe we can even apply that logic to this game. Because if we imagine when Clossius broke the mirror, imagine he played, if we go back and he
Oh,
played
sure.
C6, which would have mirrored Eric, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he plays C6, now imagine Eric, like it's sort of like the big spaces are sort of mostly taken up. Imagine Eric now like attaches J16 or something, or what if like it's Eric would have had a lot of choices for like where he wanted to take the game next, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe Clossius loses that initiative to create the type of groups he wants in the early game, like you're saying. So now maybe Clossius was worried that after he took this last big point at C6, that Eric would take the game in a direction he didn't want. He wanted to make sure he got that L4 attachment. Whether it's good or not, we'll have to see. But I think that's maybe why he did it or broke the mirror at this moment. He wanted, like, this is what he wanted, right?
Sure.
Is to create these type of groups.
And it must be what he wanted because it was his right and his decision to break that mirror. I think in this board state, I know you threw out J16 because it mirrors kind of what Clossius did, but on this, so it kind of ties back to what I said a little bit earlier, is if the game progresses without any major issues, white will win within Komi, theoretically, right? So on this board, I don't know what the best move is for white by any means, but I would, I love that I started this sentence and I have no idea how to finish it. I can't imagine something like a simple jump being bad shape-wise. And then if we see like, so forgive the validity of these moves, right? But the idea is the more space that's taken up, eventually the idea is that, again, really basic idea, right? The more that the board gets filled up, the less like black has to deal with to make up the Komi difference, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
if I were Eric, again, I don't know about these specific moves by any means, but and I'm sure black will not just play along with all of them. I'm sure black will break the mirror eventually, but the idea for Eric is not to fight anything because black is equally thick as white, right? So there's not really a fight that's going to happen. It's going to become a very territorial game. And I think black, Clossius, Sean, knowing this, can't afford to make it this is generally speaking why mirrors don't continue forever, is because eventually black has to make up the difference of Komi. And so that's why Sean kind of made this decision
Yeah.
of kind of breaking the mirror, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think Yuffington early asked me, can you show us why white doesn't fear the top right 3-3? And the answer is maybe. Generally speaking, it's kind of rare to see both of these, but I think that the top left 3-3 would probably so even when, imagine when white doesn't have this stone here, it's still not an ideal scenario for black. Like white will block from this side, and already black is going to be in kind of a little bit of a pinch. Like locally, if we look at something like this, right?
Can I ask a
Mhm.
single digit Q question?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Can this this might just be obvious, but can this R17 move live straight up with the both extensions?
It shouldn't be able to.
It
It shouldn't. My Sumego is not very good, right? But let me see from the game here.
Well, okay, I think the answer might be it's Eric Yoder, so it's dead.
Well, okay, so even here, like if black gives everything to white, like if black plays here, if white plays here, then theoretically it can become a co situation. But if it's not, and
Oh.
sorry, if white just gives the code, then something like
Oh,
this.
also, a chatter says locally it can't live, but there is also a lot of bad outside Aji. So I guess it's a viable move, but it's
Well, yeah, okay. So the reason that we generally would want some kind of support is because white doesn't have to play R15. White can play something like this, and then locally it does not have the space to live. And if like this, then simply the placement and the honey. and locally black is dead. But the idea is that between kind of these groups, I should not use A and B when they're already numbered. Between the need for white, and I mean white can play this different ways. Like white can probably play here. I wouldn't recommend it, but just for easy like understanding, that means that 4 basically has to be played. Like it has to be a Kosumi, and then the rule of this Kosumi is that like, so if there's anything that prevents, if there's any kind of Aji, this is going to be a gross example. Actually, I can't think of anything. Yeah, so and the reason I can't think of anything is because when white has this kind of double wing, it's pretty dang dead locally. The idea is then, actually, it brings up a great topic, is like, so we know that this kind of shape will occur, right? Something like this, maybe not 5 through 7, but this is the general shape that can happen. Now, imagine if you could place stones at will outside of the, like, we know that is the sequence that's going to happen. We can imagine that. Now imagine if so then the question is, what moves can I play that will affect that sequence? So now imagine if black has a stone here, right? That's going to be something against the corner, right? So even from, let me show that. Actually, let me explain that a little bit more clearly. So if now we say white will, if white Tanukis now, right? Then we know for a fact that black is going to live, right? So that's an obvious like Sente move that white will have to respond to. The question is then, does white have to respond to that move from now, right? And the answer should still theoretically be yes. I mean, there might be some change in sequence, mind you, but it should still be, now instead of black playing here, black will probably play like this. But the idea is still the same. The idea is that's the analysis of Aji, right? Is like, imagine you know a certain situation, you know a certain kind of pattern of moves that will happen right now without playing those moves. And this sport's important. Without playing those moves, what other moves on the board could influence that shape, that could influence that sequence? Rather, sequence is the word I wanted.
Yeah.
And so when we get comments like Alethea saying locally no, but there's bad outside Aji, what they're talking about is that if black has these kind of crucial moves on the outside, then there is more potential in the center. And that doesn't necessarily mean that black should go ahead and say, yeah, you know, I'm totally not hinting at anything. This is not suspicious at all. Like, you can totally Tanuki here. It's not like that. It's more like in the corners, it's a little bit different because the space is so limited. But the idea, the analysis of where the Aji is applicable like anywhere on the board. And so when you have like, you know, maybe there's let's go to the actual game here. We see that there is maybe some suspicious shape here, right? And right now we don't want to touch it because we don't know exactly the outcome. But when we start getting some more stones in the area, we can say, hey, maybe if I get, you know, a stone around here as white, again, not a move for white, but maybe then this push and cut can become more severe, right? Because now you'll have this outside stone that will help us theoretically in the fight. That stone is misplaced. Don't take that literally, but the idea is that's how you aim at cutting points. That's how you aim at Aji. It's not something, Aji is not meant to be exploited in the moment. It's meant to be like kind of hinted at, right? It's always the threat. It's the promise of the Aji coming to life. And you see that a lot in like Chochi-kun games and often a lot of fighting games where there's a lot of cutting and interactions and you can see how the whole board influences itself. And so if that answers the question in chat, I kind of rambled a bit, but if there's any questions.
Yeah. I was just like, hey, Goshi. Goshi's such a great chatter in so many people's chat. Goshi's always around. So hi, Goshi.
Goshi's amazing.
And also, yeah, that was amazingly put. I don't think I've ever heard. I love how deep, like, this is literally a game that started with Mirgo. I love just how deep we've all like gone into this game and how many questions this game has asked us just from simple mirroring. So
and I don't
very
expect
interesting.
that.
And your explanation of Aji was one of the most, I've never heard it quite put like that, so I enjoyed that. I think.
Forgive the verboseness, but yeah. So a lot of times, and myself included, like this is applicable to any level of play. Like perhaps when, sorry, I'm watching the stream at the same time, right? And I just saw a banner coming up saying "Let Midnight speak," and I'm so sorry if I've been speaking over you, Paul. But the idea is the difference. So the difference in Aji, right, is understanding what to exploit Aji, to use Aji effectively, right, you have to have probably a few main things. One of them is a understanding of the sequence of moves that is most likely to be played. Like if we take the top right, and for example, we know that, I mean, it's symmetrical, right? So I'll just go with the one we've been doing. We know that this will likely happen as a shape, right? If black wants to live, this is likely going to be the shape that black's going to use to live. So we know that 1, 2, 3 is likely going to happen, and from there we can make inferences about where are the key moves that might be all affecting the life and death of this situation, right? But if we don't know the 1, 2, 3, if we don't have that basis, if we don't have that sequence, it becomes a lot harder of figuring out where is the Aji, because we don't know what stones will affect what stones, what potential sequences will be affected by what moves, right? And so that's kind of the difference that I guess scales with skill, that scales with reading. But like even in this situation, we can say that, hey, this push and cut theoretically could be played. I don't know that I would play it as black. I would. So this is the most, I guess, most natural move, at least for me. You could theoretically be more aggressive with it, but I don't see why this would be good. The reason I say this is not a good one is because white will probably extend from the stone one of the two directions. And now if white extends this way, then there's a question to ask about this shape. That becomes a little bit suspicious when you don't have as many liberties, right, of the two stones. But my point is this, is that everyone's going to be aware of a push and cut, right? Whether or not to play it, what support you will need to play it, that's what makes the treat of Aji keep on giving, so to speak.
So, are we near the live position? It feels like
yeah, actually, that's a good question. Sorry about my rambling. So we will, yeah, let me get back to the live variations here. So white approached black, kind of asking a question of, hey, do you want to give me maybe this exchange? And then we can see what will go on the left side and see how it affects maybe the cutting, potential cutting around G4. I don't know if white should aim for this cut, but theoretically there is a shape deficiency there. But this is very much like kind of like a question move for white, from white. Like, if I know some people would maybe be tempted to play this way, but this is actually something that white would very much like, because now,
really?
yeah. So the reason is
because
because
that's totally the move I was thinking of. I'm like, I've tried to build points in the center.
Yep.
Okay, hit on
So
top.
so okay, so let me speak on that really quickly. If these moves, let me just get them off the board. Like if this was a more, let's say, I'm really just destroying the analysis tool. I'm gonna love trying to come back to the variation. If it was this board, it's definitely more likely. But the reason that black would play this way is to expand across the right side, right? And now the problem with this playstyle now is that if black tries to do the same thing, we can see that the right side is already severely limited. Black has already made these exchanges. Yeah, concentrated, and there's not a lot of room for growth, right? There's not a lot of, when you kind of play a Moyo style, when you try to build like stronger shapes that face open sides of the board, you kind of want them to be open, because that's kind of like your dream, right? That's your potential. I want all of this side. Not actually, please don't use walls to make actual points. They're used for thickness. But the idea is, because now black has made these exchanges and white has gotten this crucial K3 move, like even if we just replace this one stone with a black stone, this is, I think, definitely viable for black. It makes a huge difference. But now when we have in the real board state this white stone here, the future potential is, if black takes a move at the top or whatever, the idea is that in endgame, this is not guaranteed, right? Like white can easily make these points. So the question is, what did I actually gain from making this attachment, right? You gain some of the corner, right? You can make the argument I got 5, but the thing is, if you wanted 5, you could have just kicked, or something that's more corner oriented, so to speak. So I understand, like, we're saying, hey, we have thickness. Thickness means we use this attachment in this Joseki. But it really does depend on the board state, right? And everyone knows that. We choose a Joseki based on the board state. And so this is probably not optimal for black to play. And so for that reason, black played something.
I feel like we've got a very inspired Clossius today. He coming out with Tangen, he coming out with Mirgo, he coming out with some. I feel like he was dreaming, like in his bed last night, like, how should I do it? And this is what he came up with. Just some nonsense. I love it.
I see. Okay, so I cannot defend it as nonsense. I cannot defend it as genius. I cannot defend it as anything. This is a move that I cannot explain, and I don't think it's only me. I think there will be professionals that will be like, specifically Japanese professionals that I've interacted with. They're like, yeah, that's a move, but oftentimes it's about the follow up to move, right? Like we can all play blue moves from Katago or from any AI, but it's how we follow it up. It's how we make it affect the rest of the game, right? That makes a difference. Locally speaking, this is not a move. This is not Joseki, right? But if we look at the whole board, then we can see that a lot of things are not perhaps locally minded, but we can see them kind of maybe, hopefully, at least in Clossius's view, come together to make a holistic strategy in the end, right? Like similar to.
We've got a chatter that says it feels empty. I would like to push back on that thought. I'm a big Sean Clossius believer. I view it as flexible. Do you see the dream? It can go any which way. You can go down, up. Is it attacking the white stone? Is it building the moyo? Is it doing this? Maybe it's doing it all.
Right, and I am a romantic at heart, right? Like when it comes to like intellectual romanticism, I'm very much a jack of all trades, master of none kind of guy, and I like seeing moves that are similar to that. But to make the argument that it's hyper flexible, like in basketball, I don't really play sports, but in basketball, when you receive a catch, right, you should, or receive a pass rather, you should receive it in such a way, your posture should be in such a way that it's called a triple threat, that you have the option to dribble, you have the option to shoot, and you have the option to pass, right? So it's kind of like that follow-up, I think, is maybe what my impression of what you were saying. But unfortunately, Go is not so romantic. I'm 100% here to interpret our own personalities and our own styles and everything in the game and enjoy it through the journey. I 100% am a proponent for that. I do not think results are the most important thing in Go. However, objectively speaking, when we're playing outside of Joseki or something that was been analyzed by AI to be relatively even, it becomes harder to say whether it's worse or not. But it's because we're humans, right? An AI can give us an evaluation of like -3.5 points or -2.5 points. But what happens if white makes a follow-up move of, here or something, right? Then these two moves in together, then we can look at it as a different order of play. We'll say black capped and white played this, and now black got this extension, right? And now it's a lot better. So it all depends on the follow-up of the actual game, and that's important. But the reason I think that Alethea maybe said that this feels empty is because to play the counter argument, right? To play the devil's advocate, so to speak, this move, at least my first impression, is really close to Tengen. And so if you're saying that Tengen is influencing the stone, you're probably right. But at the same time, what is it really offering, right? When we say we want to build thickness, then it should be kind of farther away from the place. That now it becomes like Tengen is maybe a limiting stone. Like maybe if Tengen was over here, it would give a more inspirational story. But
Yeah.
Locally speaking, in response to an approach, the approach by C6, the question is, what are you losing, right? And so when you think about what you're losing, if you take something like, I actually don't know that I would actually kick. So if we take like a pincer, right? Probably Eric's going to give up the corner in some kind of way. Just okay. Ignore. So this is not best moves, chat. I fully admit this is not best moves. Let's just say something like this maybe happens, right? And now we can say a story is actually developing for black. There's actually a moyo. Of course, white would not play this way, but the idea is that there is a cohesion between all of black's moves. There's a story to be told. I think what Alethea might have meant is that after here, like even shape-wise, these stones, and if any of you follow the Colossi approach, it's not really a knight's move, it's even more than that. But and I'm not saying that white should play this, but like if white really, really wanted to, and I don't think white necessarily needs to, but if white really wanted to, this completely natural jumping move would kind of disconnect a little bit this black stone and for that reason, and then this black stone is going to be used. It has to be used, I think, to attack in some kind of way, and kind of force white to sacrifice on the outside like this, or to kind of struggle and give like a lot of bad exchanges. Maybe I don't know how white would handle this group necessarily, but then the idea is that black will profit in the handling of that group. So I think this was kind of a bait by Clossius to say, hey, jump and take this. But let's see what white actually did.
Yeah,
So,
I love you criticizing Clossius for not using his own approach.
yeah,
What a
look,
nice subtle
I didn't
roast.
say those
A
words.
nice
I
little
didn't say that.
subtle roast.
I didn't use that word at all. I didn't, I didn't.
Also, I love this. You're such a philosopher of the game. I'm so impressed by
It's
the way you sort of paint a story.
I
So
appreciate that.
uh,
You know
so
what
yeah,
they say,
attack.
right? Like, yeah. So the reason for this is similar to the previous variation, right? So this is kind of as we learn together. This is probably an invitation to fight. And locally speaking, this fight would be better, I think, for black because of black's exchanges here, right? We see that after giving white some territory, black is saying, this stone is going to help me in this fight, so I want you to fight me. That was the language behind that mysterious kind of E8, surprising E8 move. And so white knows this, and white knows that they're ahead on points along with Comey, so they want to settle this group quickly, right? And you could make the argument like, hey, I can settle my group by playing this move, but then black gets the corner too, and then black kind of gets a little bit of both worlds. So the idea, and the quickest way to settle is in the corner, right? So that's probably why white attached directly. White is saying, take your thickness, I'll deal with that later, give me my points, my group safety, and we'll see how the game goes. Let's see where this develops, right? That's probably the language behind white's play.
Yeah. I like Goshi in the chat saying, sometimes we teach our kids to do one thing, but we don't do it ourselves. It's kind of very true. Or this idea like we teach one thing, but we
Yeah.
come into our own. Like I feel like I do this too, where I'll like teach when I'm teaching like a new Go player. It's like cut extends and do all these things, but then I'm in the game and suddenly like my emotions fire up and I'm like attach.
Oh yeah.
So
I am horrible. I play emotional Go like too much, right? And I'm here for it. I think it's really important to learn the fundamentals, or at least a grasp of the understanding of the fundamentals, which I 100% both players have. I believe that both players have. But when it comes to actually duking it out in a samurai tournament, right, you kind of have to, especially if there's maybe a skill advantage or a perceived skill advantage, right? I think black started this game with mirroring because they believe that, hey, maybe I'm not as good as the opening as Eric Yoder, for example. I'm just going to copy him, right? Get rid of that, and then maybe I can play to my strengths later. Is probably the idea. But I 100% believe in breaking all the Go rules and finding out for yourself. Like there's something I this is a hot take, chat, and Paul, but like my idea is that if you're not a professional player, right? Even if you are a professional player, but the idea is play your games, play whatever you want to play. If it's bad, it's bad. If you have fun playing bad things, have fun playing bad things, right? As long as whatever it means to you, right? If you're very results oriented, learn Katago, memorize where you can save half a point and where you can gain half a point. But for me, Go is very much kind of like a more of a journey, right? It's pretty cliche to say that, but like break the rules, figure out for yourself when you can break the rules, figure out for yourself if you like breaking the rules, and then eventually we'll see, hey, maybe the rules are wrong, right? Maybe Katago comes by and says direct 3-3 is a thing. Maybe you guys can be the next pioneers of new moves, right? I know, for example, a player in this very same tournament, Jay, Jeremiah Donnelly, right? He, I wouldn't say invented anything, but he is a big fan for he's a big fan of playing something. So everyone knows this, right? And he'll play this move unironically, and he'll make it good sometimes. Maybe he'll lose with it sometimes, but he learns the variations. But the idea is that he does it, right? So do whatever you want to do, right? And whatever Go feels good to you, play that Go. Because ultimately you're playing this game for yourself, right? You're not making, it's not your living, it's not your hopefully there aren't any really high pressures on you to perform, but
yeah, don't show my move off, Jason. We're revealing his prep. So, okay. But yeah, after honestly looking at this board, after the D13 move, honestly, if I were like just playing OGS, at midnight as my SDK self, and I'm white, I'm looking at black, and I'm not gonna lie. I know, white. We're talking white has a great position in this game, a lot of solid territory and whatnot. I would be a little scared as white, honestly.
Okay.
I'm looking at black, starting to look like they're having some sort of dream or framework. Uh,
Yeah.
so now I feel like we're getting to the point where maybe white's got to actually reduce something, or
Right.
at some moment, maybe not yet, but I'm starting to see a vision for black.
Exactly. And so I, being absolutely really bad at this game from time to time, most of the time, I'll see. Here's the thing, right? Inside of me, there are two wolves, right? And one of them is like, yeah, take points. Everything is gonna be fine. Just keep taking territory. You'll be okay, right? And then the other wolf is like, yo, my opponent has a huge moyo. I gotta invade. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. And then I'll die. And then my opponent will win by a lot of points. And I remember playing in Japan, and I was playing against someone like 3 stones stronger than me, probably something like that. And they gave me literally everything I wanted. I think she was former Insei, but like still pretty young. She gave me literally everything I wanted on the board. Like any Hane, any kind of overplay I thought I was doing, she'd just give it to me, right? And what happened was eventually there was a giant moyo, like giant. And I mean like I had like 60 points, 70 points in solid territory, right? And then the problem is that there was such a moyo, and then I had to invade, and then I died because she just had. There's a skill differential, of course, but that kind of calmness, right? I lack that calmness in a lot of ways, and actually, Go's helped me with that a lot. But being comfortable, if you're saying that you're going to take a lot of points, it's only natural that your opponent gets a framework of some kind, or a strength of groups of some kind. It
Yeah.
literally cannot be the same. It cannot. It should never be a situation in which you have a big territorial lead on your opponent and they have bad shape,
Yeah.
and they have weaknesses in shape. Like that should theoretically not be possible.
I mean, speaking of good shape and calmness, look at Eric here, just
Let's
simply
see.
fixing his weakness, biding his time, waiting, no
Yup.
rush.
Yup.
Uh, so
And
here we
so
go.
these are local Joseki moves, and now we see that he has come to reduce. He's saying, Dormammu, I've not necessarily come to bargain. I've already done the bargaining. I have enough points now to win this game. So let me kind of make sure that you don't, right? So we start off with a shoulder hit. And
Yeah, right. I feel like if my instinct would be just like whatever, play J16, but I think, as we're visualizing here, it would just not be enough. So I feel like, yeah, Clossius has to cook something up here, right? You got to make something happen.
yeah, and so this is so if you remember kind of the question I think that Yuffington asked earlier in the stream is like, what is the odd around R17 for black, right? This move at first glance doesn't really look super reasonable, and I don't necessarily think that it is, but it has a clear message of saying, maybe a clear message of saying, hey, I have a stone at A, I have an imaginary stone at B and C, right? What can this move like how much of a pain in the side could this move be to you, right?
Yeah.
What are you going to do about this potential Audrey in the corner? If you just give me this, then maybe I can uh, play this one.
Yeah.
I don't
Get
know,
some
but like
territory. Yeah.
get some territory, get some, yeah, and maybe this is a reduction of sorts. I'm not sure exactly about the exchange here. See, the higher and higher up you go, this mystical go ladder of ranks and strength and whatever it is, each move carries more of a weight, especially move outside of Joseki, of course. And so this is saying like, just by making one move, this exchange, we're saying that black is saying I've gained in this exchange. And just from playing this move, that means that if I play anything else, locally speaking, A for B was something that I benefited from.
Right.
And to
So White's going to
justify
try
that,
the resist, right?
well, see, that's the thing, right? So there's several options, right? So if I play A and B and play another move, now it's White's not necessarily job, but it's more like White saying, how do I prove to you that this move was bad, right? I can play something like this, keep strength, get a lot of points. The question is like, yeah, it's like an argument of sorts, right? Black is saying I did something good here, and White's like, you didn't do something good here. And then who's actually going to win that? It all depends on the resulting moves, right? That's the fear.
Yeah.
So the idea is that when the more you play the game, the stronger you get, the less willing you are to force an observation. So everything's kind of like in a quantum state, right? There's endless possibilities with this setup. You can maybe play a shoulder hit in the future, or maybe you could play this attachment, or maybe you could play, something like this. I don't know, right? But all these things, all these potential different opportunities, like variations, disappear when you make this exchange, right? So because it kind of, you lose all these different potential things to do. A lot of people are hesitant to make these sorts of exchanges without knowing that there is a tangible benefit to doing them. That's why we don't see random attachment and then Tanuki, right? Theoretically. So I don't know how this will be handled, and I think we should find out. So
Hane, here we go.
Hane is resisting, and now Black is saying, I'm theoretically going to cut off your stone at A.
Right. If white cuts, they probably give up. Black gives up the one stone, and then probably, exactly.
Yes, something like this. And
now white has a huge corner, and now all that R17 Ajis suddenly almost disappeared. Maybe the other side, they still get Aji.
Pretty dubious at best, because now the thing is, even if there's a stone here, if you start with, here, then I can just play from this side, and there's no way you can ever make anything. Yeah,
the thickness is too much.
That Tanuki is too big. Yeah.
Oh, okay. After this exchange, it's starting to feel like to me that white is getting too much.
Yeah, exactly. So this would be a pretty bad local cut for Black, I think. So White can just play this one. And even now, even with this move at 4, it's kind of asking a question of Black, like, are you going to play this one? And then later, it's not a cut that White should make, but if we remember the Aji, now we can say, if I get this move, now this move is Sente, right? So the story of this is, I get 6 and 6 is Sente almost anyway, but there's more Aji with 6, right? That's the idea. I don't know if this double Hane is reasonable, just calling it out. But so even now, and Black should never, if Black has to play this move, then White has already made a ridiculous amount of benefit. The reason I say that is because White is imagine this scenario where it's kind of like this peep, but you get 2 moves for it. Black connects both times to answer the peep, so to speak. And then also the end game when it comes to the top side is also now White's benefit, or at least Black will add an extra move. So White gets this. White is just super comfortable. I can't. White's like more than
still
just
slightly undercut, and your shape is not great. And
which is why
I got the whole corner, and now there's no Aji left in the corner. Right. So how does Sean respond here?
Yeah. So I just want to say, I don't think that this should not be played by Black, right? And so let us find out. Yeah. So Black plays this extension, and the idea, I guess, behind this is trying to say that if you, just from the message, I haven't read anything yet, but if you play here, then I have at least the cut first, right? And now what if happens is I'm threatening to play the Sagari, which will capture the 2 stones and affect the white corner on the top right. So you will have to play here, and then maybe I can jump something like this. And now I have more of a framework in the center. I think that's the kind of idea behind Black's pullback here. Which looks like
better. Better than the other variation.
Yeah, definitely better than the other variation. But the question is, if White just captures, right, and then if Black plays here, then you can see we've kind of reverted back to the same variation.
And White gets sort of the initiative.
Right, and White gets the initiative and all the benefits. So then the question is, if White plays here, what is Black going to play? For example, I don't know what actually happens. I don't know if White does capture, but that's kind of a question I have. And okay, so it looks like White did capture in the game. And it's a great question to ask, because like our previous variation, right? This is too good for White. And now if you play here, now the difference is that White doesn't have to play this move, right? In the previous variation, we saw that this was the sequence 1, 2, 3. But now if White captures, if White does not push, then we don't have to play 1 for 2. And 1 for 2 is not a good exchange, right? Because we can see from this situation,
White wants the jump in the center and have the initiative, right? It's
exactly.
Like they're both trying to vie for a move towards N13 or whatever.
Exactly. And so we see that in the game, this is kind of the shape that happened. And White, of course, does not play this one. White plays, L13.
Okay, I sense my tingly senses are tingling. A fight is about to commence, right? Because White is saying, I'm going to reduce you, and it's too much, probably. I guess we haven't counted. So Chatter was even suggesting the C word. We don't quite know what they meant, and then they spelled it out. Counting.
No.
if there's a moment that counts, maybe this would be it for Clossius, being like, okay, if I'm winning and have more points, I can just play a little softly, but otherwise you gotta cook something up.
So I think when you're playing a Moyo style in general, it's better to count the solid territory that your opponent has, and then you kind of know the limits of your Moyo, what you need to accomplish with your Moyo, right? So I think for Clossius, I would first start by counting how many points Eric has. And the way we can do that, Alethea can do it in chat. He's the end game guy. But let's use high estimations, and using vague estimations is the way I can cover myself as not being an amazingly horrible Go player. But let's say in the top right, let's take this for now, right? We can say that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So here's 15. There's 16, 17. So we'll say this is about 22, 23 points. I think that's a fair estimate of maybe a little bit high, but we'll say white has 23. Where do I put this notes wise? One moment. I am good at this. Okay, let's choose a darker color, something like this. So white has about, that was, sorry, not great contrast. Okay, let's say white has about 23 points here, right? In the bottom side, we can say that white has 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Let's say about 15 points here. 15 is a little bit high again, but just bear with me here. On the left side, we can say that, sorry, I can probably denote what is the left side. Let's start with this piece first, right? We know that in cash, white has, I can mark it. That's brilliant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And whoever gets like C2 or the cut at D3 makes a big difference. But we can say this is probably around 10 points. I would, but if black plays, yeah, I'll call it 10 points just for the sake of ease of counting. And chat, you guys can please chime in and call me out anytime. I have no problems with that. So we'll say 10 points, and then we'll call the upper left corner. There's so much endgame here, but we'll call this also about 10 points. So if we look at that, plus Komi, and so 7 points Komi, right? So 27 plus 23 is about 50, right? Exactly 50. And then plus 15 is 65, plus Komi is, oh no, we already had Komi. So about, yeah, 65-ish points for white. Emphasis on the ish.
Yeah.
And how much cash does black have, right? The answer is nowhere near 65. So let's see, like 2, 4, 6. We'll say this is about, we'll call this 10 points. It's not fully 10 points, but I'm being lenient to both sides, right? 10 points. We can say that kind of this area. I shouldn't make the box higher. I should make it lower. We'll say that kind of this area is something we can kind of count for black. We'll say maybe another 10 points. This is kind of suspicious. I kind of hate doing this. I don't think this is a good way of counting it. But we'll say about, let's say black has about 20-ish points in cash, right? So black will need 40 points through the use of all the influence, right? So all of the black stones on the board together have to make another 45-ish points.
Yeah, and it's not even like if black got 40 points from influence, white is still going to get more points elsewhere as well, right?
Right,
so,
exactly.
So from our evaluation, it seems like, yeah, black's got to cook something up and resist this white move to me, right?
Right. And so I also want to make the distinction, a very important one, that when I say black has to make 40 points, I'm not saying black is 40 points behind. That is not the message I'm trying to convey at all. The idea is, how much do I need, right? So like all of the stones together have to make, 45, 50 points. It's not that I'm 50 points behind. I just have to prove that these stones are 50 points or something like that, if that makes sense. Because I used to think like, if I have a Moyo, wow, I have, but like, how do you count a Moyo, right? There's so much endgame. There's so many sequences you have to think of. Like, am I behind? No, the stones that you played have value. They should have value. And it's just how we actually make that a tangible result, if that makes sense. So, okay. So black is saying, white, you have invaded too far. You have come to die. Maybe not straight up saying I'm going to kill you, but it's more like, exactly where are your friends in this board? I have a stone at Tengen. I have a stone at R7-ish. Like, show me how you're gonna, like, what moves are you gonna give me as you try to um connect back to your friends, right, to the other side of the board. And so there are a couple of ways of approaching it. We can see here that black is saying, if you want to take this way out, this is not even a good variation. I lied. Okay, so imagine a world in which black does not cut here or something like that, and black plays like this, right? And we'll say that white plays something like that. It's not even a good move, but we'll say that if black were to play this way, which black should not, black is making the argument that, hey, I got enough from this hane and this thickness that this solid territory now, this God, my drawing is amazing. This area is now probably my solid territory, and that's enough to let you get away with your invasion. I'll just treat it as a reduction. I'll let you off the hook. That's all I need. If black were to play that way, white is saying, I don't even want to play that way. Give me all that you've got, right? I've come here to make the day bad for you. I've come here to be a pain in your backside, basically. And so the problem is with this situation is, in the previous variation, black was being kind to white, and white was kind of being nice to black as well, because white is now saying, you got to prove it to me. Like, prove to me that you can kill me. Prove to me that I can't run away. Prove to me that I cannot come into your thickness or your influence and take everything and then get away with scot-free, right? I think a partial reason of why white is playing like this is because of this ponuki, right? This kind of really beautiful shape here. It's very directly staring at this cutting point at A, that if black were to play, too slack or too non-committally or even too aggressively, that I can always have this option of fighting you like this way. And now the question is, can these black two stones survive after the cut? So white is saying, I'm going to go deeper and deeper, and you have a cutting point. What are you going to do about it? That's kind of like the idea. And so Clossius is saying, I'm going to double hane. I'm going to ask you, are you going to fix my cutting point for me? Like, is that how this is going to go? Or what are you going to do? Right? And so white is preserving the aji of the cutting point. So I would have been tempted probably to not play this Atari, because this is pretty difficult. Like, you'd have to make some kind of fighting shape here. That seems suspicious at best. But anyway, my point is, don't play this Atari. If you're going to play an Atari, play this one. But the problem is, after this situation, you can still see that white is theoretically under attack by black, right? Like, if you take this, then I take this, so to speak. If I want to keep pushing, like, how's this going to go? Maybe it's a fight. Maybe there's a risk there. So instead of forcing that result, instead of losing the possibility of the Ataris, we just kind of look at our opponent and be like, yeah, that's a cut. You want to fix it? You want me to Atari you? Like, it's kind of like a game of chicken, right?
Yeah. And this is very Eric Yoder style. I think I remember a game from the Pro Quals where, I don't know if I have this backwards, but his opponent, I believe, had a huge moyo, and he just dived in really, really deep. And he just keeps going. It's like, I feel like, we were talking about emotions while playing Go.
Yeah.
It's almost like I feel like this is a part of Eric's style that he cannot resist. Of course, in this situation, it looks like he still has all the everything figured out and isn't risking too much, because he understands the game well and his strength, like you said, the Panuki and all these things. But I love it that, like, he's like staying true to form. Maybe he could have, if he really calculated the score, been like, I can play it slightly safer or something like that. But
yeah,
gotta stay true to your style, right?
No, and that's perfect. And that is actually the crux of the conversation. This move is saying that it's saying one of two things, right? One, I'm behind on points and I need to invade deeply, right? That's the assumption that white is behind on points, and then white plays this move out of kind of desperation, kind of like fighting style. The second one is saying you have a shape problem. So, like, maybe if you play a move on the side or a move in the center or something, theoretically, like aiming for something like this, right? Then I can play, hey, maybe now this cut comes alive, right? Maybe now you have to deal with this aji. So maybe there's some aji to be exploited. Or the reason that, like, white is playing so deep is saying basically either he can get away with it, either he needs to get away with it. Or like you said, it could just be a whim of personality, and maybe you just invade deeply. Like, maybe white is ahead enough.
I think it's a personality move. I think it's just an Eric Yoder move.
And no, and I would totally believe that. I would totally believe that.
So I will just add just really quickly, we've been doing such an amazing job, I feel like, on this game and going deeply into it. But the next slot of games is supposed to start around 3.
Okay,
So I
sure.
think we just need the quicken the pace
Okay,
a
yeah.
little
Sorry,
bit. So yeah.
forgive me. I did
No,
not
I
know.
it's been so good.
Okay, no, awesome. Thank you for that time warning, and I will take it on the chin. So black eventually, so black plays the Atari, white connects, and black now has to fix the double Atari. White peeps at the shape, black will connect, plays the Atari. So these moves are kind of white's right. Like these are fully sente. They affect the life and death of everything. These are the exchanges that white gets to make and has chosen to make. And now white plays this Atari, and Atari, and what's this I see? Yes, not a ladder, unfortunately. But I feel like I've seen Yoder play a ladder like this in the Chicago Open too. Maybe it wasn't that tournament, but so now the story is now it's like if white can live in the center, the game is over. If white dies in the center, the game is over. With a different victor, obviously. But this has very much become a shinobi shobu. So if the theme is samurai, there's a phrase in Japanese called shinobi shobu. Shobu means like uh, face-off battle, so to speak, like a contest almost. And shinobi is like ninja, right? So the idea is that white has ninja'd into this big moyo and everything. And now the story is if the ninja can come out alive, if the ninja can live and escape with his life, he has won everything. He's got the information, he's infiltrated, and everything is good. But if the ninja dies, then the game is over. That's why in Japanese it's called shinobi shogu. In
I
this
love that.
situation,
That is perfect analogy.
yeah,
Like...
so exactly. So in this game, it seems like it would be pretty difficult to kill this group as black. You can see that black has the surrounding stones, but there's too much center area. Like even if I weren't to live, like I get this is my benefit. Like there's pretty much anything white will do will threaten to come out or make life. But black is saying that that is not true. So let us see what is the actual truth of the matter. So white does play that shape move. And black is saying, I'm going to escape that stone. You're not going to have eye space. This is purely a game about killing white now. And there could be an argument to make this into territory instead and let white live in the center, but I don't have the time to analyze it, and I don't have the skills to analyze it. So we're just going to go over that possibility. So white does play this asking move. This is an asking move because it's saying if you want to connect here, you get some benefit in the corner, which is to say, like later on, black can play this Hane pretty freely now, and now white has to basically capture this one stone. And before that wasn't the case, because before this exchange, if white played that way, then if black played that way, this would be an Atari, right? So anyway, small benefit. White is asking a question: how committed are you to killing me? Which is a great timing for the question. Like, are you going to invest everything, or are you going to give me some benefits here? And black says, I'm investing everything. This, locally speaking, this capture for white is absolutely massive. It is huge. It's not as big as the center, but it's definitely like a nice consolation prize if the center were to die, if it can die. We'll see. But just getting that is pretty big for white in and of itself. So white is gained from that because now black is committed to killing white. This was kind of a question of, hey, are you actually trying to kill me in the center, or what is this? What are we doing here? Tell me how I should play my next moves.
Well, yeah. Well,
And
the
black's
fact
like,
that black didn't even connect
think about it. Yeah,
shows
yeah,
that white might eat their cake and have it too, or whatever the phrase
yeah.
is. Right? It's just like white's getting everything. Beat a
Yeah.
bully.
It's
Oh
making
no.
it even bigger. It's making the center being killed. Like black has to kill the center now. Like you're just giving up, you're hemorrhaging points basically, and you have to prove that what you're doing is legitimate and that you can afford it. That's the whole thing, and that's a really tough decision to make in the game. Definitely not easy, and so I commend black for committing to it, even if it doesn't work out. So white is saying, how many forcing moves are you going to give me? Surely you're not going to let me play like this, right? I haven't read this, but like theoretically this cut should be fine for white. White will connect out, and black has lost so many points locally and everything, it's not even a conversation. So like now you have to probably capture me, or what will you do, right? That's the question. Sorry, I jumped. So black's saying, you tried this before with K16. I will simply attach like I did at N17. So I don't actually know. This is saying, I won't let you connect. You can have
right.
this stone.
He's committing the killing. He's giving up everything for the kill.
He's going everything for this specific kill, right? So let's measure real quickly the difference in the scale of the kill. Before, the scale of the kill would have been this, right? And
Right.
now by
Now the
white
kill's becoming
asking,
less and less big.
right,
White's even
exactly.
like starting to ask the question, like, even if you kill it, are you even winning?
Yeah, and I think the answer is still yes. I don't think white should die in the center. I think it's
Right.
still probably really big, but the idea is
It's
that
coming closer. Yeah.
exactly, it's becoming closer. So of course white tries to stay connected, and black is saying, "Are you going to save these 5 stones?" I would not personally like this is a point where I would be like, have I gained enough, right? Have I gained enough here? And have I gained enough here, breaking the center, to let go of those 5 stones? Because remember, you have to like those stones are not dead yet. If I just connect solidly, I don't know what the shape is, chat, by any means. Uh I genuinely don't know. Probably just okay, let's say something like this. We're going to ignore this possibility or something like that. But let's just say I'm going to connect here. Are you going to play another move to capture like 10 points, 12 points, 15 points? You know, like, is it worth another move? And then I get sent there for the end game. I don't know. So at least what I'm trying to say is when black asks this move, I would consider I've gained so much on the left side. Maybe I can let go of the center a little bit. And so white does. Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, that was the game move.
White, you called it.
Perfect. Yeah. So I don't know what the correct shape
Eric
move is.
Yoder level. I think you.
No. So the only reason is that you're trying to prevent if you play any other move, then you have to prevent this cut too, right? So then how do you prevent that cut? You can't really play here. I mean, you can, but there's maybe Aji in the future around that cutting point. You don't want to leave another cutting point is the idea.
Right.
So this is where I came up with this. But yeah, so black's like, go ahead, take it. And now white's like, go ahead and take it. And black's like, no. I don't want it. That's just my insurance, right? That's just my, if push comes to shove, I can break this fight. I can just take some quick cash. That's my exit strategy, right? But black's still saying, I'm not going to let you get off easy. I'm going to pressure you. Plays the Atari. Is really committed to disconnecting white from the rest of white's group, right? That makes sense. At least logically from a idea point of view. And so now white is saying, I don't know what you're talking about. You have so many stones in Atari. You have so many cutting points. What's happening? And black saying, I'm going to squeeze you. And now I'm going to take that pension, so to speak. I'm going to take that fallback plan because black was unsuccessful in fully disconnecting white. I don't even know if it would be really possible. I think if black plays here and white captures, this might become some kind of co-locally. So then if black connects here, can black play this one? And what does that look like? I think it would probably be similar. So if we say that this... Sorry, I just really want to read this for myself. I don't know what this would be. So ideally, I want this one, right? So if I get this and then black plays here or something, then I can capture these 2 stones. Fairly simple. So black has to play something like this one maybe, and then I hane here. And then after this, maybe another connection and something like that. So anyway, I think white would be able to connect either way. It just happens that this is the shape that white connected with, and that's kind of not good for black because the difference is that black. So remember when we were counting, we counted that this is separate from this, but now black gave these 2 stones as cutting stones and they got captured. So it's even bigger in terms of points. So black lost quite a bit in this fighting. You gained the 15 points, but
at what cost?
At what cost? Exactly. and I mean that is kind of like the brilliance of the Shinobi Shobi vibes, right? And so black seals off the rest of the territory. Now it's just basically come to endgame. I cannot imagine this being the biggest move on the board. Like, no disrespect intended, and I could be fully wrong. I'd be curious to see what AI says here, but like, I would definitely still play something on the left side, or at least play this one.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, it's endgame.
Yeah.
The idea is that it's endgame. That's the important point.
At this point, I was even looking at score estimator. Like white's up by around 20. So like once white connects to the center, it's basically GG's, right?
Right.
Eric found a way to connect, and even like you said, in addition, the connected the bottom side and the top side on the left side, making even more points there.
Yeah,
so
this
it was good enough.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so we'll see towards the end here if we have but a moment. Just kind of I have morbid curiosity. So black's trying to make some Aji, maybe get into the corner, but will ultimately be unsuccessful because there's an Atari in the center. White gives a little bit here, no problems, and is just simply, this is weird. Sorry, is this weird? What is this? Oh, because white can't play this one anymore. As opposed to, okay, maybe not weird. I digress. This is me, chat, being fully selfish and just kind of seeing the rest of the moves for my own sake of curiosity to see how this endgame went. But yeah, there's no more points to be made on this board. It's all very simple, kind of straightforward endgame. Don't get cut. Everything else is like point differences of like maybe 2 to 3, 4 points max, which is a lot, but unfortunately on this board state it is not. So that we have caught up to the game. There's maybe like 2, 3, 4, or 5 points on the board, but the story of the game unfortunately is that white is ahead by about 15, 17 points.
Wow, yeah, despite the loss that's gonna be here for Clossius, I love the approach he took.
Which was, to be fair, not the Clossius approach.
Right, he not even close to the Clossius approach, unless somewhere in the fine notes of the Clossius approach, it's always play Mirgo against Eric Yoder somewhere,
Knight shapes are cuttable, and also play mirroring against Eric Yoder. This is the tenets of my philosophy.
But I love the psychological start to the game where it's like, whoa, I'm playing Mirgo, that kind of can catch your opponent off guard. And then I feel like at the key moments in this game where Clossius, needed to like create complications and try to make it a fight because he was a little bit down, I feel like he took those initiatives and tried to make fights where he could and where he had to. So in the end, obviously Eric found a way to make the group in the center connected and whatnot. But I love what we got here from Clossius today, because like we kind of knew he was the underdog going in a little bit, and I feel like he fought with valiance valiantly.
This game was a treat, right? Like with moves like A, B, I know A is already marked, but I don't know how it's B and C and not A. Anyway, my point is with these kind of like counter punches and like, let's say, out of the box thinking, this game was like a true treasure to kind of go over and see out towards the end how it like transitioned into endgame, what kind of stories were told, what the end results of those fables were. Maybe there is a takeaway, maybe there isn't, but at least from this game I can see that Clossius played a game that was fun to Clossius, and I think that is the most important thing in the end. But of course I'm not playing, I have no horse in this race, so to speak, but yeah, it was definitely a cool game.
I like one of the chatters saying the Closs isn't approach.
Clossian approach. I found that really, really funny. I didn't know if it would be disrespectful to laugh at it. Yeah, this is not the Clossian approach. Please do not mimic this. I'm sure he'll say the same.
Do not try at home.
Yeah, or do play the go that makes you happy.
Yeah. That's what I do agree. I absolutely think if we were to ask Clossius how he felt about this game, I absolutely think he would say he had a lot of fun. We can even see, I love how Go, like, you know, people call it hand talk. I even feel like we can sometimes dissect, like, how, like, you know, if someone's playing some silly, goofy moves, you can tell, like, oh, they're having fun with it. So
yeah, absolutely. And we can see from the breakdown that they're both playing relatively close to equal amounts of good moves and bad moves, like, relatively speaking. At the bottom on the stream anyway, the breakdown. And I think that speaks a lot too, because it's not easy to not lose points while playing Go, right? It's not easy to make moves that are not horrible in this game of Go. And I think it kind of speaks to both of them as players, and understanding the different shapes and the emergent board positions to kind of stay within that realm of sanity and not playing like purple moves or something, you know. So
yeah. So yeah, or what's the live position? Maybe we can go back.
This is the live position.
Okay, so we have a couple moves left.
It's literally like 4 moves, and none of them are worth any points. Like, there are no more moves that are worth any points on this board, except for a couple of half-point moves, and that one, literally that one. So white has a capture. White can connect at T9, which white does. And then that's about it. White can play this ko, black can connect the ko. I can't imagine if black were to play T13 that white would play this one. I would play this if I were like half point behind, of course, right? Because it's literally life and death of a ko. But I don't think either player will really opt for such a small hill to die on. And oh boy, if I'd be wrong, if Eric plays T11 here, then that will tell me his personality more than the K4 the K13 move. If he's not willing to sacrifice even a half a point to simplify and end the game. Okay.
Oh, okay,
Thankfully,
okay.
thankfully.
I
I
love
was
the
setting him up,
anticipation you
man.
built
I
for
was
that
setting
moment.
him up so big, but luckily, just understanding of the game prevails, and they'll probably both finish up the Kos, and Black will play L17 because it feels good to not have an empty triangle, even though it doesn't really affect anything. Like, no matter who gets L17, it's not a point. But you know how when you're ending a game, right, and you're filling out the dame, you're like, there are some dame that I would rather get. Like, I just personally want those dame because they make me feel a lot better.
I totally know what you
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, it's one of those. So White plays L17, and Black's like, damn. But both players know. Yeah, exactly. Both players know there's no resulting. There's nothing like hangs in the balance of L17. But I have a feeling that Black wanted that dame point.
Cool.
But yeah, they'll both fill the Kos and play the last K4 move, and the game will be ended. So final score is projected to be White by 16.9. Nice. I don't know how it says 0.9. Like, what understanding of Kos does Katago have that I could never possess in literally the last point on the board? L17 has co-threat value. That's true. L17 has co-threat value.
Unfortunately, we had such a good time going over this game. We didn't get to look at the TangJie game against Satarios, but we can see what the result was.
Okay, J1.
Yeah, J1. No surprise there.
Just joking. I'm sure it was a well-deserved, well-fought win. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so we see that. Okay, so Cheshire won against Sun, and Paige was triumphant against Semyon. And we do see that Eric has confirmedly beat Clossius and will be facing off against Jay.
So we've got some absolute banger matchups coming up in a little bit with B versus Paige and J versus Eric. But our next round of games are actually going to be the first round of the losers bracket.
Okay.
Which will be the Loving Sun versus
Semyon. Okay.
And Atarios versus Clossius.
So that's both matches. I would love to see. I know that Sun and Semyon play sometimes on Sun stream. But Atarios versus Clossius, I want to see how. I don't know much about Atarios' way of play, but I think it's more of a calmer, ironically, like closer to Clossius' approach than Clossius' last game with not the Clossy-int approach. But I kind of want to see how these two gentle giants kind of fight it out, and who will proceed further in the brackets.